So I've spent over 3,000 miles backpacking with this tent when I really wish I would have had this one. Today's video is going to be about the PLEXAMID. So this is the tent that ZPACKS came up with to fully replace the Plex. They are kind of similar, but also not. This one's lighter and, in my opinion, better. This video is going to be about why you should get this tent if you're looking for the lightest, most spacious one-person tent on the market right now. I'm going to talk about some pros and cons, and yeah, let's get to it. So right before my hike on the lowest to highest route back in April, I reached out to ZPACKS to try and see if they would send over the beta version of the PLEXAMID tent that they are currently selling, so that I can test it, review it, share it with you guys. And I was super excited when they agreed, because I've actually been wanting to get a lighter, more efficient shelter setup for a while now. Actually, towards the end of the PCT, I've always felt like I could definitely go lighter, and there's just a couple of things that the Plex just isn't that efficient with. So both tents are actually pretty similar. They're both non-freestanding, single wall, Cuban fiber, fully enclosed tents. But they're different in that the Plex is heavier than the PLEXAMID. The Plex is not as spacious as the PLEXAMID, and the Plex requires 2 trekking poles, while this one only requires 1. If you're a current Plex user and you're pretty comfortable being in the outdoors and you really want to make a huge drastic change in weight as far as your shelter setup goes, I probably wouldn't recommend the PLEXAMID for you, because it's just a few ounces lighter, but they're very similar in ways. And if you want to make a super drastic change, a bivy and tarp might be better for you. But if you're someone that's just now getting into ultralight backpacking and want to make a huge difference in your overall base weight, then I think the PLEXAMID is perfect for you. So as far as pitching the PLEXAMID, it is pretty simple, but like with the Plex, it still does kind of require a tiny bit of a learning curve at first, but you know, once you do kind of get the hang of it, you realize how simple it actually is. So with the PLEXAMID, it has 10 total guy lines that one could anchor down to the ground. Only 6 are technically required to keep the tent upwards, but I always like to use all the guy lines available when I'm pitching my tent, when I'm actually out on the trail, except when I'm like super lazy and I might leave maybe 2, so like by the head and the feet. I guess my only main tip for pitching the PLEXAMID, and also with the Plex and most like non-freestanding tents, is that when you are putting in all of your stakes, you don't want to tension any of them until they're all in. So that way you are kind of seeing how the tent is kind of like holding up in case you need to like make adjustments to the position of each stake, if that makes sense. And yeah, and then once they're all in, you can go one by one, tightening them and tensioning them as you need. So what I really love about both tents actually is that they're made of DCF, which is formerly known as Cuban fiber. DCF is known for having a really great strength to weight ratio. So super strong fabric, yet very little weight. I have the beta version. The regular PLEXAMID comes to, I believe, 14.8 ounces. And the one that I have is 13.8. But yeah, it's not only super light, it's also very spacious. And that's my second most favorite thing about the tent. It's bigger than my Plex, interior space-wise. And the reason why it's bigger and why they were able to do that is because, so it only requires 1 trekking pole right in the front of the tent, whereas the Plex requires 2, 1 in the front and 1 in the back. So with my Plex, where the back trekking pole would go, there would be a back mesh wall that would also come down from the roof of the tent down to the bathtub floor. So this wall created essentially just like a big long space to kind of fit and sleep in the tent, but it would limit the amount of width potential that the tent had. So there was essentially a lot of wasted space between that back mesh wall and the back walls, regular walls of the Plex. There's almost like a vestibule area there that you can't have access to. So that was really weird, and I never liked that. With the PLEXAMID, there is no mesh wall coming down, and it's just like a lot of width space, and I love that. I'm a really weird sleeper, so I like to sleep on my side and like that, and then like stretch my legs sideways. So yeah, the PLEXAMID is super spacious, and actually on the lowest to highest route, I was able to, for funs and giggles, fit all my friends in the tent. So there's 4 of us. One person was actually fully in the tent, like stretched, laid out, and then the rest of us, we were just sitting in the tent with our feet coming out the doors. It was like actually pretty impressive that we could even all like halfway fit in there. So yeah, all that interior space, that's my second favorite thing. And then just the fact that it only requires 1 trekking pole. So how ZPACKS was able to maximize the amount of space in the PLEXAMID and how they were able to just make it overall the lightest 1-person tent available right now is of course the DCF material, the Cuban fiber, and also the fact that they are using a Super UL Nano No-Seam mesh, whereas I believe in their older stuff they had a really lightweight mesh, but it wasn't as light. They incorporated this squared off peak at the very top of the tent. It's built into the tent, so when you're pitching it, the roof of your tent, instead of being pointy and coming down straight down like that, it's got a little bit of a flatness to it. So it just makes more space inside the tent, more headroom for those people that are taller. And I think it's a pretty unique feature. I don't know how well it will hold up. I have heard some things from people where the little rods that they use to basically incorporate into this like board have broken and like punctured the tent. Definitely something to be a little bit concerned about, but I will test out the tent a little bit more because right now I've only used it a handful of times, and I will let you guys know how that goes. I don't really know what else to say about the tent except that I wish that they had made this tent before the ZPACKS or anything else, like for a 1-person option, because I would have definitely got it back in the day when I was first putting together all my gear for the PCT. So 2 of the main drawbacks for the PLEXAMID and any Cuban fiber like backpacking gear is the fact that it can easily puncture through with like any sharp objects. Cuban fiber does have a really good, like it has a really high tensile strength, so it's good for pressure on the fabric, so it doesn't really stretch at all, kind of like sil nylon stretches. This one won't stretch, so that's why it's so good for backpacking, but it's still a very thin material, so you want to just be careful with where you're pitching your tent, any bushes that are like on the sides or any trees overhanging onto the tent that may have pine needles or any sharp objects. With my older ZPACKS, I never once got a hole in the tent, like ever. I did order the thicker spruce green material of DCF, so the PLEXAMID one they sent me is their standard thickness. So we'll see how that lasts. ZPACKS does provide DCF tape, like extra repair tape, so when you do have a hole, you can just easily patch it up. But as far as the holes, I can't really say the same for the stuff sack, because the stuff sack is really like almost see-through now because there are so many, not really holes, but it's like definitely fraying, and all these little Cuban fibers are just, yeah, they're kind of falling apart. It's been like this for a while, but it still does its job at protecting the actual tent inside because the tent is like intact completely. Another small downside to the PLEXAMID and like really all non-freestanding tents is that they're a little bit more particular with the camping spots that you have to find in order to get a good pitch. So you always want to try to find the flattest spot possible. If it's not completely flat, if there's like little obstacle, it won't make or break whether you are able to pitch it at all. Like you still could, but it won't be ideal. If you are in a situation though where it is impossible to pitch your tent, what I do is just like lay the tent down, kind of like as a ground sheet, and then you could get inside of it, kind of like a bivvy. So I've done that in the past on uneven surfaces with the ZPACKS, where I didn't just want to lay it down and like sleep on top of it. because of bugs or like ants in the area, as long as you like keep your face in an open spot somewhere, but with the mesh closed so that you could breathe. And it works great, so it has that versatility to it. The second drawback for the PLEXAMID and other Cuben fiber products is the fact that they're so expensive. So the PLEXAMID costs $550, and that is a lot of money. So yeah, I'm not really sure why Cuben fiber things cost so much. Like, I don't know if it's because the raw material is so expensive from the get-go and companies just have to price their items accordingly, or if it's because there are not a lot of companies doing it, so the ones that are can pretty much set the price to whatever they want, or maybe it's just like a mixture of both. The good news is there are more companies like experimenting with DCF. Most recently, Big Agnes, they have a tent now called the Fly Creek. Like, it's in their Fly Creek line. It's a one-person tent, and they've incorporated DCF. It does cost $800 though, which is terrible. It makes the PLEXAMID seem cheap compared to that. Overall, if you do a lot of backpacking, or even just a couple times a year of like somewhat long trails, and you like to not have a super heavy pack, making a switch in your tent to like something that is super light can really make a huge difference. And to me, that's worth it. I don't have a good back. Most of you guys know that if you've been following me. So I always try to find ways to make my overall base weight as light as it could possibly be, with a little bit of comfort in there, because I'm not like crazy ultralight. But yeah, that's kind of like my thought process when it comes to backpacking gear. It's an investment, but having a lighter base weight, and that includes a lighter tent, definitely equates to more joy, in my opinion, because it means less pain, less of a struggle while doing something that you love. Alright, well that's pretty much it for today, guys. If you have any questions about the video, let me know in the comments and I'll get to it as soon as I can. If you are currently a PLEXAMID owner, also let me know. And just share with me like your thoughts so far on this tent. Let me know what tents you guys have. What's your favorite things? Yeah. Alright, well thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.